to one and all. This is Khushbu Verma from the IMSA Research Wing, and I'm here to present our project titled Nutritional Assessment of Children up to 5 years of age showing delay in gross motor milestone achievement. The word hunger means uneasy or painful sensation caused by the want of food, whereas on the other hand, the term world hunger relates to scarcity of food in the countries. Now, more popularly or technically, we refer to it as malnutrition. The normal nutrition entails a balance between energy intake and energy expenditure. Now, what we see is whenever this balance is disturbed, we come to see malnutrition. So the spectrum of malnutrition comes to include undernutrition and overnutrition, where one half of the world we see is feeding less, the other half is actually feeding inadequately more. That has been depicted in the sketch on this slide. Malnutrition has been currently a hot topic for discussion in India because the findings of NFHS 3 has revealed that around 50% of the Indian children are wasted and underweight. Now, the Ministry of Women and Child Welfare has released a campaign currently, and this campaign is targeted against malnutrition with the slogan Kuposhan Bharat Chodo. You might have heard on your television sets numerous times Amir Khan persuading people to raise an alarm against malnutrition and to create awareness regarding this particular disease. It's basically a humanitarian crisis that is grossly neglected. And how do we know this is the fact? When we take a look over the economic implications. Now, it has been documented in various studies that India is a country with the largest number of disadvantaged children. Now, how do you define disadvantaged children? These are the children who are both malnourished and those of who show a delay in the gross motor milestones. So, what happens to these disadvantaged children? These disadvantaged children show a loss of potential. Now, as compared to their Western counterparts, the Indian children have been shown to have almost similar potential for growth, but they hardly reach it. What is the cause behind it? This might be one of them. This loss of potential then manifests itself in lower admission rates in the schools and higher dropout rates from the schools as well. And how would that lead to loss of income is that various studies show each year of schooling contributes 5 to 9% of increase in wages in the person's income, and definitely the low admission rates thereby lead to low income rates as well. Now, this finally leads to an intergenerational transfer of poverty. Just imagine, a simple medical condition could cause so much of an economic burden to a developing nation. Now, this particular cartoon depicts that the social and cultural factors are as well very important in the disease etiology. What we see here is that the gender bias has implicated in a higher prevalence of thinness among girls, despite the fact that the propensity to develop malnutrition as well as infections is much more higher for the males than for the females. Now, how come we see this? It could only be defined by the differential treatment to the fairer sex. We see that there is a differential treatment in terms of care as well as there is nutritional deprivation. Now, I would not bore you with a lot of literature or a lot of literature facts and findings of our project, because there are some things that are much more interesting and intriguing than just the project findings. So take a moment back, just relax, sit back and take a deep breath, because what we are going to see is something that will definitely raise goosebumps. We had 14 teams from all over the country, 200 undergraduate students working under us, And now I say something that you won't believe. We did not have any budget. No budget at all. Would you believe that? I won't. No nutrition, no professional help at all. Now, as they say, the whys have always been important than the hows. Left to wonder, how come only undergraduate students did this project? How come people who never met in real life did this project together on such a large platform? Obviously, you must be wondering how? But again, as they say, the hows are not as important as the whys. Why did we do this project? Why only malnutrition? Why only developmental delay? Why, for that fact, gross motor developmental delays? Now, why were we doing this? Now, here I can list tons of literature on this particular topic, and I shall later, but at this particular point of time, what I want you to focus is not that particular why, but a different particular why, and that is, why did this particular team came together for only this topic? Why did we do it? And as it is behind every great thing, there's a small story. So is our case. We have a small little story, rather an incident that happened with me, and then we finally decided to do this project and somehow came together. We had our usual ward postings, I remember, in the pediatrics department. It was, I guess, 5th semester, and we were taking case of a little girl who had measles, and just after the case was over and we were trying to go back, the father of the girl child came rushing to me with his son in his hands, and he said, "Dr. Sahab, my son is slow. He's not like his sister. He couldn't prop his head despite being elder." I looked at the kid. He was quite cute and he smiled at me. But I did not know the answer. I was left to wonder. And before I could ever think of an answer, he shot me with another question. Will he always be slow? Is he suffering from some kind of mental disorder? Obviously, how could I know this answer? I did not knew anything about it, and I was dumbfounded. Every one of you who is sitting there, at least the undergraduate students, can correlate with this particular situation. We all face this. Many of the times the patient asks about the prognosis, about the future prospects of the patient's survival, and they hardly know what to tell to the patients. It's not that difficult if the patient is asking about himself, but when the parents come and ask about their children, it's something that has a bit of an emotional component. We feel bad for them. We try to help them, but we don't know what to do to them. Definitely, this one of the incident that I have told you about is not something that might bring tears in your eyes, but it is something that will disturb you, that will perturb you, and that will make you think that what was the cause. I was kept wondering till I asked my professor, why did the boy lag behind? My professor was actually angry. He said, "How come you did not read about developmental milestones?" And he gave me an assignment to actually go back and read about milestones. So, as it is with this generations, rather than going through books, we love the internet. So at night, I opened up my laptop and I was scrolling through. I was actually checking out what exactly this milestones mean. And I read about gross motor milestones, then fine motor milestones, something about social skills, emotional development, everything I went through. But what I was wondering through all this is, what can I do? What can I do to help those parents out of their worries? How can I ease them out of this particular problem? Can I do something? Obviously not. I'm just an undergraduate student. What am I at this particular point of time? Just an undergraduate student. I don't have finances. I don't have resources. I can't go and talk to the government. I can't bang the doors of different doctors that help people. They need some help. I just can't do anything like this. What could I do? And at that particular point of time, at that particular point of night, what do you think came to my rescue? Any guesses? Well, whenever you listen to my answer, you'll be very amused to realize what actually came to my rescue was none other than Facebook. Yeah, it was Facebook. I was a part of IMSA since 1 year, and I knew that there's something called a research wing IMSA, but I never heard about some activity, so I just decided to drop a message to this guy called Satwant Dagar, who was the head of research wing, and he actually replied to me. And coming few days were something that I never anticipated. I actually landed myself in trouble, big time trouble. For 1.5 months, I don't remember stepping out of my room because I was asked to do a strict literature search, and if I really wanted this particular project to progress, I was asked to back up my hypothesis with a big amount of literature. So I went on to prepare the protocol around 6 times when it was finally declared just fine to start. And then we had a very simple beginning. We started with a small chat group on Facebook titled Project-MDM, where we used to discuss about what we are going to do, and following this we recruited members for the core team, and for this we took help of the executive board members. Namely, I remember that time we talked to Manish Chandra Prabhakar, and we also talked to Ramesh Khatana, who helped us to drop in people for this core team. And we also posted on Facebook our IMSA groups regarding the new volunteers recruitment. Following this, what we felt, once the core team was formulated, once the project managers got hold of responsibilities and stuff, and once we started working, we felt a need for something bigger, a bigger platform to work, something more specific, more professional than just Facebook. So we had a very unique website of our own web space, and it was IMSA Research Project 2012, and where we had a specific section called Training Boot Camp. This is the training boot camp where each of the particular instruction was laid down in step-by-step manner, so that anyone who comes to happens to have a glance at our site would know what exactly is going and what exactly he has to do in step-by-step manner. The site has a specific section, the training boot camp, which listed everything into instructions in a step-by-step manner. Even the protocol, for your information, has everything so much in detail that a newcomer or a new volunteer would understand everything by himself and would hardly have any queries. And we also made them available videos on the website, and that would train them for specific sections and the different milestones. And relating to these videos, we had different files that were the Word files that we had, which listed the standard operation protocol, again corresponding to each particular video. All the site team leaders as well as the project coordinators were made to strictly adhere to the standard operation protocol and whatever was listed into the protocol. Now, this is a scheme that we followed for recruitment. Following the recruitment, we had training, and only after the site team leader underwent an adequate period of training, we allowed him to create his own team at his site. Now, during the period of training and after the period of training, the site team leader as well as the project coordinators were free to communicate with the core team through the MDM help desk as well as the 24/7 helpline that was run by the team. Now, this slide that depicts the help desk that was run by these 4 people, Shiv, Shatabdi, Raj, Lakshmi and Prateek, show how much of the dedication went into creating this particular kind of atmosphere where the children, that is where the volunteers from the junior most volunteers like the project coordinators can actually communicate with the core team with a lot of ease. We had all the channels of communication opened up. The training boot camp was a specific section in the website that we had which listed everything into step-by-step instruction, so that any of the new volunteer that comes to join us would know exactly what to do and which particular sequence to proceed into. Even the protocol was highly detailed for the same purpose, that each particular step was made very clear in very basic language so that none of the queries or questions would arise. In any case, we also made available different videos for the specific sections of the protocol. And we also had standard operation protocol files, Word files that were uploaded on the website and were made available for the students who wanted to refer to them while viewing the videos and to keep it as a future reference. Now, this is a general scheme of our recruitment. Following the recruitment, we had all the site team leaders underwent a period of training, and only after they confirmed undergoing a particular set of adequate training schedules, we then allowed them to create their own team at their particular site. Now, during this period, when they created a team, they were free to communicate with the core team members. Even the project coordinators who were working with them were free to communicate with both of them, the project managers as well as the core team members. And for this, we had put up MDM help desk, as well as there was this something that is much more interesting, a 24/7 telephone helpline that was run by our members. Now, these 4 of the members, Shiv, Shatabdi, Raj, Lakshmi, Pratik, were the ones who were available 24/7 just for the sake of convenience of the new volunteers who were going to join us. They made the queries clear in all aspects of the project, from how to join, from how to read the protocol or what to do about the protocol, how to get the ethics clearance, and even someone who did not knew anything about protocol or the project was explained by these 4, by this team of 4. And you will be surprised to know that we even had a call from England. A professor called in us and he wanted to work with us. And now this is the project scheme again. The core team members were divided into vigilance teams. So we had 3 vigilance teams: the Central Anthropometric Vigilance Team, the Central Pediatric Assessment Vigilance Team, and the Central Dietary Assessment Vigilance Team. Now, these vigilance team had an eye over what the site team leaders were doing in terms of the training, as well as what they were training to the subsequent project coordinators. These were the objectives, and now the objectives were basically divided into phase 1 and phase 2, and currently we have completed our phase 1 successfully. And the phase 1 basically was a cross-sectional study of the children, where we screened the children up to the age of 5 years by random sampling, and we categorized them into mild, moderate and severe malnutrition. Following this stage, our phase 2 is going to occur actually, and this phase 2 is when we are dealing with the inpatient pediatric patients who are declared to be suffering from developmental delays. And on these patients, we are going to undertake a nutritional assessment that consists both of the anthropometric and the dietary assessment. Now, few of the conditions have been related to be concomitant with malnutrition, so we asked our project coordinators to find what was the prevalence in those particular sites where they carried out the study. And what we found out was maximum number of cases were of acute respiratory tract infections, followed by persistent diarrhea and tuberculosis. Here we have the gross motor milestones. Now, we chose the 6 gross motor milestones because they are reported by WHO as to be most constant over the ethnic and the regional variations. These milestones are sitting without support, hands and knees crawling, standing with assistant, walking with assistant, standing alone and walking alone. We had specific videos prepared for all of these developmental milestones, different videos for each of the milestone, and also a different standard operation protocol for the total of the milestone as well, available on the website. Now, a specific section was there in the history sheet, that was the family history. Now, these conditions like epilepsy, migraine, cerebrovascular accidents, and developmental delay, as well as inherited disorder, are the ones which predispose an individual to developmental delay. So the answer to that question, why did that boy lag behind, could have been even explained by the family history, not only just by malnutrition or like whatever the environmental factors, but even by family history. So in the areas that we conducted our study, we found out to be around 14.66 prevalence of the positive and significant family history in this regard. The findings that we got in the gross motor milestone section were that we found that the sitting without support was significant with weight for age and BMI, and the hands and knees crawling was significant with length for age. Nutritional assessment. Now, first of all, we'll see anthropometry. We had 6 parameters for anthropometry. The first 3 are weight, recumbent length, and height. Using the weight, we determine the weight for age, and using the weight and height, we determine the weight for height, and using height, we had determined the height for age for each of the specific case we got. And following this, we actually calculated the prevalence of underweight, wasting, and stunting in the community. The other 3 parameters that we had were head circumference, BMI, mid-upper arm circumference. Now what we did with BMI is something interesting. We did a comparative analysis of both overweight and underweight. And with mid-upper arm circumference, obviously, we classified them into mild, moderate, and severe malnutrition. This particular graph shows the weight for age representation for both the sexes together. Now what we see here is that the boy, that in the earlier ages or the earlier months of the life, we have a higher prevalence of underweight, that is around 60%, which droops down to 52% in the age group 12 to 23 months. However, when you take a look at this slide, which depicts weight for age representation for boys, you see around 70% prevalence of underweight in the age group 0 to 5 months, which is quite shocking. And then it again just drops to 45% at an age of 12 to 23 months. Now, if you just consider the next graph, that represents something that is almost reverse of that. 45% to begin at 0 to 5 months, followed by around 60% at the age of 1 to 2 years. This particular graph is for the girls. Now, how come we see something that is totally contradictory? For the boys, the prevalence of underweight decreased from 70% to 45% by the age of 2 years. However, for the girls, it actually increased from 45% to 60%. How can you explain this? Obviously, gender bias. Now, this graph depicts the comparative analysis that we undertook. The yellow bars represent underweight section and the blue bars represent the overweight children, and at all the ages we find that the underweight children are always outnumbering the overweight children. So despite their claims that we have a double burden of both underweight and overweight children, we somehow see that the underweight are always predominating the concerns of a developing nation. Definitely they contribute much more to the mortality rates. So here, if we have a look at the BMI comparison chart for the boys, what we realize is at the age group 0 to 5, we have a high prevalence of underweight boys, and in case of overweight, it's just 8.7%. Now if we switch over to the next graph that depicts the BMI comparison for the girls, what we find out is the underweight percentage is almost the same. However, the overweight is by far much more than the double of that for the boys. So again, if I switch back to the previous curve, I see that the prevalence of underweight is decreasing as the age is increasing. However, in terms of overweight, it is almost achieving a plateau at the age of 1 year. As far as the girls are concerned, definitely the rates of underweight is lesser than that of the boys. But what we see here is that the overweight is persistently high up to 1 year of age, which reduces a little, about half of it, at the age of 1 to 2 years, and again increases to almost the same as it was at birth at 2 years interval. Now, with the mid-upper arm circumference, we categorized into mild, moderate and severe malnutrition categories. Here, the orange bars depict the mild or moderate cases of malnutrition, and the blue ones depict the severe cases. Now, as we see here, the mild cases are much more in number, and they are the prevalence of moderate to mild malnutrition is much more than the severe malnutrition, which is definitely a good sign. Now, again, if we have a look at the mid-upper arm circumference for the boys representation chart, we find out that there is a higher prevalence as compared to the girls. And even in the cases of severe malnutrition, please have a look at the age group 3 to 5 years. In case of boys, it is 6.3%, and if we skip to the girls chart, we find it is just 0%. Severe malnutrition in girls in the age group 3 to 5 was found to be 0%. Something that is interesting. Now we have the next part of the nutritional assessment, dietary assessment, my favorite. So the dietary assessment constituted of semi-quantitative dietary history, the breastfeeding history, food behavior, attitude and knowledge. What we did with this semi-quantitative dietary history was, we calculated the calorie deficit. Now you might ask questions, why only calorie deficit, why not proteins, why not micronutrients, why only calories, why only energy? Because the National Nutrition Monitoring Bureau has reported that in Indian households the energy inadequacy is much more important than protein inadequacy. And considering the fact that India is a country where the diet is mainly cereal or millet based, the crucial hold-up is energy inadequacy and not the protein inadequacy as we believed earlier. And what is much more better and interesting to know is that this particular hold-up can be overcome just by increasing the quantities of the usually consumed food items. Now, there were a lot of difficulties we faced while we were trying to formulate the semi-quantitative dietary history, both in terms of the protocol and as we did our pilot run. And the first problem that came to us was that there's no prepared food list in our country for this particular age group, the pediatric age group. There are only 2 food frequency questionnaire, that is one for Gujarat and one for the southern India, but nothing that could be applied to the pediatric population or all over the nation. So, apart from that, there are a large number of permutations and combination of Indian recipes possible. You know, when we consider the region, the religion and the ethnic variations, there are so many of the recipes available. So how could I list all of them together? It would have been a very big list. And consider this, how would I ever estimate the portion sizes? I don't know how to estimate the portion sizes and how to quantify them for the students. I don't know. And as you look, even if I listed all the food items one by one, and even if I took the pains to list everything according to the religion, region, or maybe the ethnic variations, what would it cause to the stats team? A lot of headache. So I had to look into it, that how could I cause minimum trouble to them to reduce the food items to such a way that they could actually manage. So I reduced the food items by just including 85 items on my list, and they were categorized into 11 categories. Now these categories we had adopted from the Dietary Manual for Indians from the Annexure 1 and Annexure 8. This Dietary Manual for Indians has been prepared by the National Institute of Nutrition, Hyderabad, and we had taken a written permission from them regarding the use of these particular annexures. Now the categories that were there, I would just list them: cereals, pulses, vegetables, non-vegetarian, savory snacks, chutney, desserts and sweets, beverages, nuts, fruits and salads. Now consider this fact that even like a single category had many food items listed on them. We had food items like roti, fulka, parantha. In the category cereals that are predominantly consumed in northern India, and also food items like idli, dosa that are predominantly South Indian foods. So we tried to include all those items that could cover the different sides of our project. This is a screenshot of the semi-quantitative dietary history sheet. The top row depicts the frequency calculation that we were trying to inculcate in the history sheet, where we see that the frequency has been listed from never to around 2 to 3 times a day. And as far as the serving size is concerned, we were doing it corresponding to the food item listed. Like in this case, if you see the rice, we have listed the serving size as a cup, half a cup or a large bowl. And if you see the next screenshot where we are depicting fruit cake and besan barfi chikki, where we would just ask in how many pieces or how many in terms of number. Now the type of diet that we assessed, we found out that around 60% of the data or the children that we assessed were having a non-vegetarian diet, followed by a little amount of vegetarian, that is only 7%, and around 33% of the vegetarian diet. Now the next slide depicts exclusive breastfeeding. Exclusive breastfeeding is below 6 months has to be 100%, but what we found out in our study is it is just 63.44%. Now this should raise concerns, because mothers now at this particular age, if they feed their infants with something apart from breast milk, potentially introduce them to infections. Also, they would decrease their appetite for the breast milk. So, this should have been much more higher than the prevalence that we have noticed. The type of milk offered was predominantly cow, followed by buffalo and goat. The milk powder, only 13% of the women admitted using even milk powder. Now, this particular slide that is titled complementary feed is something kind of contradictory with the slide that you saw about the exclusive breastfeeding. This slide depicts that in a sample size of 340 that we had in the age group 6 to 12 months, only 39 women started the complementary feeding at the age group of 6 months. Now this is something that is raising concerns, because the women were neither complying to an exclusively breastfeeding schedule, neither were they starting the complementary feeding at the age group of 6 months. So this is something that shakes us. Amongst the type of milk offered, cow milk was the most common, and around 13% of the women reported using milk powder as well. Now this slide titled complementary feeding is going to confuse you a little, because what we found out was a very little amount of women started complementary feeding at 6 months. Now this is kind of contradictory with the slide that the slide that you have seen just before, that is about the exclusive breastfeeding. Women neither started the complementary feeding at 6 months, neither they were strictly adhering to the exclusive breastfeeding schedule. So what happens, like, you introduce the children to infections, and when the age of the weaning comes, the mother is neither supplementing with the foods that should have been done. Now, the next section is about food attitude, behavior and knowledge. We asked the women how many of them received Folifert tablets. Around 76% agreed that they had received Folifert tablets. And we also asked them, how many of you have heard about midday meal program? And only 65% agreed to have heard about it. Now consider this fact. Hearing about something and actually availing the benefit is a very different fact. Only 65% heard, and how many of them would have availed the benefit? We never know. But this next slide makes something evident in this regard. Knowledge. About 58% of the women claim that they had the knowledge of the health programs around their area, or that it was present in their particular site. However, when we asked them how many of them had availed the benefits, only 47% reported that they actually got some kind of benefits from the health programs going on in their areas. So, how come we have a 10% gap, around 10% gap from knowledge to the practice? How come there is such a big leap? We also assessed the developmental evaluation of the feeding skills, and for the maximum of the children we found out that they could eat without assistance. Now this is a good sign because the child can feed himself whenever he feels hungry. As far as the mineral supplements is concerned, only 10% of the women agreed using some kind of mineral supplements, and that too, maximum of them were using on the advice of the doctor. Now this slide again is very interesting, as we now see that how many of the women believe that the complementary feeding should be started at 6 months. Maximum of the women agreed that the complementary feeding should be started at 6 months, and we only see small peaks at 7 months and 12 months. So how come this knowledge again did not transmit into their behavior? Like, women claim to have, and they even showed in this particular question that they have the correct knowledge, but the application was lacking. How come this is possible? This is something that puzzles even us. We are also unable to find out why is this difference present. Conclusions. What we found out regarding the underweight prevalence complies with the previous knowledge that the infant mortality rate is higher for the males. However, the child mortality rate is much more higher for the females, and that is what exactly we have depicted in terms of our underweight rates, the prevalence rates. Now the males had a higher prevalence of the underweight in the age group from 0 to around say 12 months, and beyond that they had got a very healthy weights. However, for the females it was the other way around. Secondly, we found out that the prevalence of mild to moderate malnutrition was around 15.5%, and the prevalence of severe malnutrition was around 6.1%. Another interesting finding that I would like to quote is that though the women had the knowledge regarding the health benefits, the health programs around them, they would hardly avail to them. Though they knew the healthy practices, but they would not put them into action. Now why is it so? This is something that is very perplexing and very disturbing. We need to look into this particular factor, because only women have the power to change the feeding of this country. Lastly but not the least, I would like to list this fact that the awareness regarding the supplementary or the complementary feeding practices is very less, and there are more economical options that are made available by the National Institute of Nutrition, Hyderabad, in this regard, and they should be popularized by the government. We do not see any of these particular advertisements or the campaigns that are taking. They just kind of hype about malnutrition. They do not talk about anything regarding how can we stop it, how can we decrease it, are there any more cheaper, economical, more possible, options that is available to the grassroots level, to the common man. Can there be something done at that particular level? This has never been emphasis of any kind of campaign that I've seen till now. So something this is that what our team felt that should be done in this regard. And here is our team, the project managers, that is me and Satwant. And here is the core team members, the lovely people that we work together, especially Ranajit, Shubhajit, Chatabdi, DS Suhas, Shiv Joshi, Hardik More and Sneshish Pradhan. And again, the site team leaders, the 14 of them, 13 are listed. We had a new site team leader from Bhatinda as well. These are Pooja, Vibha, Shubhajit, Ranajit, Zeba, Gudela, Manjula, Shiv, Hardik, Sonia, Stephen, Chaitanya, Urvashi, and the last but not the least, Angat from Punjab. And yeah, now I would like to thank all of you, and I should not forget the project coordinators. Those were the ones who did the actual hard work, who went into the fields, who worked hard, and who actually worked at the grassroots level to compile such a large amount of data. I would like to thank all of you who were a part of this project, not for the sake of some monetary benefit, not for some other sake, just for the sake of doing this particular project and just for being in this team. I would really like to thank all of you. And apart from all these, there are some special beings that I like to thank, and these are those little kiddies that roam around in our pediatric department that always kept me going, and those of whose innocent eyes always led me to let me answer myself my own questions that I raised in the beginning of the presentation. What can I do? I'm just an undergraduate student. What can we all do? We all are just undergraduate students. How many of you have been told the same limiting thing again and again? You're just undergraduate students. Come on, you can't do anything except studies. Look at this, what we could do and what we have done. Actually, without any professional help, without any financial help, this is what we have done. And here, I'll tell you that the story is still left. It still continues. Picture abhi baki hai mere dost. And I hereby also welcome all the new volunteers who would like to join us for the phase 2, as the phase 2 begins just after the karmic is over.